With the upcoming release of the 5th Indiana Jones film, for some reason, I thought I'd look back at the film that kicked off the storied franchise, Raiders of the Lost Ark. The brainchild of George Lucas and directed by Steven Spielberg, what was intended to be a lean, mid-budget throwback to classic adventure serials became a pop culture phenomenon.
Indiana Jones was always meant to be a B movie. It was always meant to be a kind of low-cost movie
whose presence can still be felt today 40 years later. With that said, the film is 40 years old, and there are definitely things that are beginning to show their age. Is its pacing too slow for today's audiences? Could its depictions of various non-white cultures be deemed offensive by modern standards?
Shoot.
On the other hand, what elements still feel at home in the 2020s? We'll discuss all this and more. Let's jump right in. Let's start by talking about Indiana Jones. Does the man himself hold up in 2022? It kinda depends on how you want to look at it. Is he a cool character who represents just about every stereotypical male fantasy? Yes. He's played by early 80s Harrison Ford, so he's objectively the most attractive white male to ever exist. He obliterates Nazis like it's his day job, he's smart as all hell, and he has a mostly noble career as a teacher and archaeologist. With all that said, there are elements to his character that modern audiences may find problematic. I'm going to try and keep this as neutral as possible. Your opinions on this stuff may vary, don't shoot the messenger here, but some of the ways our culture has shifted in the last 40 years have made some aspects of his character a little dated. Perhaps the worst thing the Indiana Jones franchise did was make several generations of kids develop a severely inaccurate view of what archaeologists do. It'd be like watching Star Wars and thinking that this is what a NASA spaceflight looks like. The film can be forgiven somewhat for its portrayal of Western archaeologists taking people's cultural heritage for profit, given that's just what we did back then, but what makes the film somewhat dated in this regard is how it portrays Indy's actions in a relatively sympathetic light.
Yes, the museum will buy them as usual, no questions asked. Yes, they are nice.
The fact is, antiquities, largely from the global south, which includes Latin America, Africa, Asia, and the Mideast, have been taken and enshrined in European and American museums on a much larger scale than you may realize.
Yes, they are nice.
Ultimately, he's a thief, right?
Indiana Jones is an archaeologist. In his spare time, he's a grave robber.
I mean, the film's title is Raiders of the Lost Ark, not Protectors of the Lost Ark. Raiders has a negative connotation, right? Thieves, pirates, that football team in Las Vegas. Belloc does the whole "we're not so different, you and me."
You and I are very much alike.
A badass line that I don't think is used in any other films and media.
You and I are not so different.
Remember when I told you we're not so different, you and I?
For a lot of these moments, we as the audience are meant to go, "No, bad guy, you're wrong." Despite certain similarities, you and the hero are clearly very different. But when I heard Belloc say this in my most recent viewing, I was like, well, he's kinda right. Let's break it down.
Archaeology is our religion.
Now that's true. Say what you want about Belloc, he does seem to have an equally voracious passion for discovering lost artifacts as Indy.
Yet we have both fallen from the pure faith. Our methods have not differed as much as you pretend.
This is also absolutely true. They both go to places around the world and take artifacts away from their native regions to sell them. The only difference is Belloc seems to sell them on the black market, whereas Indy sells them to museums, likely for less profit, which is noble, but still not the most honorable. On top of this, both Belloc and Indy are equally willing to murder anyone and everyone who gets in their way. I guess Indy would never work with some 2-bit Nazi, but I get the sense that Belloc wasn't particularly sympathetic to the Nazis one way or another, and more or less saw them as an extreme means to an end, that end being discovering the Lost Ark. I actually really liked when Indy mentions Belloc's connection to the Nazis later in this scene.
What about your boss, Der Fuhrer?
Belloc looks uncomfortable with it, almost as though he understands that working with them is wrong, but his desire for the Ark is stronger. At least he's above murdering Salah's 9 children. My man fucks. Yo, wait, that's his wife, right? Doesn't he get all bricked up at the end after Marion gives him some kisses for helping them? She knows he's married, right? What up with that? Is it 'cause she's white? Anyway, back to Belloc.
I am a shadowy reflection of you. It will take only a nudge to make you like me, to push you out of the light.
I mean, if there's a line in the sand, working with Nazis is definitely past that line, but intentionally putting yourself in situations where you'll need to murder dozens of people for some artifact is also pretty far past the line.
Besides, you know what a cautious fellow I am.
I mean, I get it. Who doesn't love to watch a hero murk bad guy after bad guy? It also fits into its place as a classic adventure serial homage, so all in all, I'd say this element is largely excusable when it comes to the film holding up. Most people aren't going to care about this stuff, and that's okay. One other place that makes Indy kind of look bad is his relationships with women.
Hello, Marion.
While it's never closely implied that he sleeps with his significantly younger students, the film plays around with it in ways you'd probably not see today. There's a deleted scene where a student comes up and says she was hoping she and him could have a conference.
Susan. That's right, I said we'd talk. Marcus, be a pal. Give us 4 or 5 minutes. Will you go have a cup of coffee?
Not now, dear. Professor Jones has a very important meeting.
I was hoping we'd have some sort of a conference.
I'll be back in my office around noon. All right? Noon?
Also in the scene where Marion reconnects with Indy, she claims that she was a child in their previous encounter.
I never meant to hurt you.
I was a child. I was in love. It was wrong and you knew it.
Now, obviously, she's just stating that she was young and foolish and that she wasn't actually underage, so, wait, what's this? Is this the script to the film? She is Marion Ravenwood, 25 years old, beautiful, Do we know when they last interacted?
I learned to hate you in the last 10 years.
10 years? So she was 15? Oh God. When was Indy born? 1899. The film takes place in 1936, which would make him about 37. So 10 years prior, he'd be 27. Yeah, that's, not a good look.
It was wrong and you knew it.
You knew what you were doing.
Now I do. This is my place.
So, yeah. While, I don't know, era appropriate, I guess, in a completely fucked up way, this element does not hold up. Now, if you think this story doesn't get any creepier, then buckle your fucking seatbelts, cause it does. See, when developing the script, Spielberg, Lucas, and the film's screenwriter Lawrence Kasdan had 5 consecutive 9-hour discussions fleshing out the story, and, well, I'll let this random 10-year-old reenactment I found on YouTube tell it.
We have to have them cemented in a strong relationship, a bond.
It'd be better if they had a relationship from before, and then we wouldn't have to build one.
Yeah, I was thinking that the old man could have been his mentor. That way he knew the little girl since she was a kid and had an affair with her when she was 11. Yeah, are you getting all this, Larry?
Yeah.
Just write it down. He hasn't seen her in 10 years. Oh, now she's 22. That would be a real strange relationship.
No, she better be older than 22.
Okay, he's 35, and he hasn't seen her in 10 years since he was 25 and she was 12. It would be amusing if she were slightly young at the time.
And promiscuous. She came on to him.
Yes. Now 15, that's right on the edge. I know it's an outrageous idea, but it is an interesting one. Yes, she's 16 or 17, and it's just not interesting anymore. What?
Nothing.
Go on.
But if she's 15, and he was 25, and they actually had an affair the last time they met, and she was madly in love with him,
And she had pictures of him.
that's a great idea.
Jesus Christ. George Lucas wanted Indy to have an affair with Marion when she was fucking 11. Even being as generous as possible in the sense that they're just spitballing random ideas over countless hours, the fact that this went through George's head is really fucking gross. And this isn't even the whole thing. You can read the transcript yourself. It goes on being fucking creepy. Like, I don't even know what to say about this. It's really fucking weird. What's also, I don't know, something, is that I kind of get the vibe that Spielberg had a little mini crush on Karen Allen from some of the behind the scenes stuff. I really want to tread carefully here. I don't want to overstep, but like he's constantly hugging and kissing her or touching her in ways that he doesn't really do with anyone else in any of the behind the scenes footage. As we know from my review of Halloween 3, there are often, let's just say, cynical reasons why a male director might choose a leading lady.
I saw the final 3 or 5 girls that they had selected to narrow it down. And as soon as Stacy walked in, everybody perked up.
Literally, as I walked in the door returning from the audition, they offered me the part. I mean, that never happens, so it was great.
I don't want to accuse Spielberg of anything. I honestly don't think there's anything substantive to accuse him of, George Lucas notwithstanding. I'm just describing a vibe I caught from the behind-the-scenes footage.
Okay.
There's no evidence of Spielberg shacking up with any of the leading ladies on any of his films, right?
I don't want to leave your face for one moment.
Anyway, let's move on. I want to talk about... Huh? What's that? Oh, he married Kate Capshaw, Indy's love interest in Temple of Doom, and has a half a dozen kids with her? Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure this is all just a big happy coincidence, right?
Is that too tight?
Yeah, that's pretty tight.
1 is chance, 2 is coincidence, 3 is a pattern, right? Anyway, let's move on. I want to... Huh? Oh, before he married Kate Capshaw, he was married to actress Amy Irving, who auditioned for a part in his film Close Encounters. Well, hey... whatever, I don't want to talk about this anymore. So in conclusion, the big obvious stuff that's cool about Indy's character I think would still absolutely appeal to modern audiences, but certain aspects beneath the surface bring him down a little bit in 2022. One thing that really works for me today is the aesthetic. Like, in the intro, we see Indy exploring this ancient, untamed jungle, armed with just his knowledge and a tattered, centuries-old map. I wonder what awesome adventure he had to go on just to get this map. I know it's problematic today, and probably for good reason, but there is something I find kind of fun about this era of archaeological discovery.
And the museum? The museum gets the Ark when we're finished. Oh, yes.
In 2018, a report commissioned by the French president found that over 90% of all Africa's cultural heritage is held outside Africa by major museums.
Oh, yes.
The way Europeans and Americans basically stole countless artifacts from around the world is fucked up and could have been handled way better.
But not before carefully taking thousands of artifacts. They piled them up neatly, photographed them, and even labeled them loot.
Oh, yes.
But watching humanity rediscover its incredible shared heritage is kinda neat to me. The film does a great job of making this world feel big and lived in. I mean, I know that this is technically real life, but we get a sense that this world of violent, exciting archaeology is large. I like that this wasn't an origin story. Indy's been around the block. He's clearly been in enough booby-trapped ancient temples to know his way around this one.
Stay out of the light.
He has a longtime rival, and he has a mentor that helped him get to be who he is today. Speaking more broadly, there's a lot about the film visually that I think still holds up incredibly well, and certain elements that definitely feel more dated. The film came out in the early 80s, which was toward the tail end of an era where cinematography began to shift away from the play-like lockdown static shots to becoming more dynamic as we see today, and Spielberg was a pioneer in that regard. Visually, the film sits in this intermediate area, and I greatly appreciate it. We're treated to many great longish takes of dialogue where things are moving, then the camera locks down for a little while, the characters talk, and the background elements serve a purpose to the scene, and then the camera starts moving again. I don't want to be that person who dogs on modern movies and says things were better in the past, but having a dialogue scene where characters are supposed to walk around, hit marks, and not cut every 3.5 seconds takes effort, and that effort is noticeable. It's definitely easier and more efficient to use lots of cuts and do a lot of shot reverse shot, but in my opinion, the extra effort is noticeable, and definitely puts the film far ahead of similar general audience films made today. With all that said, not every visual element holds up perfectly, especially in Blu-ray quality, but there's not a whole lot you can do about that really. Some of these styrofoam sets look like styrofoam in 2022, many of the film's special effects look really dated, like the hard cut from this beautiful silhouette to this gaudy rear screen projection on a soundstage is like a punch in the face. The optical effects with the spirits coming out of the Ark look really rough too, and I can appreciate a good map painting, but some of the ones in Raiders really stand out to me. It's not as obvious looking at it on my computer monitor as I type this, but the matte painting of the warehouse at the end looks super painted on Blu-ray. I mean, what are you gonna do? Keep in mind, y'all, I'm not saying whether this makes the movie worse in a meaningful way. I'm just describing some elements that are showing their age from a modern perspective. Wait, what? Joe Johnston? Like the director of a bunch of fairly well-known films, Joe Johnston? Huh. I guess he was an art director for a bunch of Lucasfilm projects before he got into directing. Interesting. What was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the visuals.
Friday night. If we don't get this, we don't get the shot.
If we don't get the shot, we don't get the movie.
If they don't get the movie, we're all up the creek.
Despite these somewhat dated effects, their technological limitations meant that shooting most exterior shots required them to actually go to real locations to film, which in my opinion results in significantly better looking imagery than a lot of the stuff filmed today that are filmed on obvious green screen sets or those new terrible stagecraft sets, where it all looks very confined and limited.
We probably removed 200 or 300 aerials, especially from the wide panoramic shot that brings Sala and Marion and Indy out onto the veranda. But in a way, I kind of like that a lot of effort went into creating an authenticity that couldn't have been phonied up 23 years ago.
So all in all, a lot of Raiders holds up extremely well visually, and other aspects have long begun to show their age. Most of the performances from the main cast are solid enough.
Look at this. It's worthless. $10 from a vendor in the street. But I take it, I bury it in the sand for 1,000 years, it becomes priceless.
There are a few moments that are cheesy, but hell, this was intended to be a cheesy throwback from the start, so with that in mind, they're easily excused in my view. But a modern viewer who doesn't know anything about the film's original creative intentions might be put off by certain stylistic elements.
There is an atmosphere to this movie, not unlike a lot of old movies.
Throwback to an older kind of film. It's a high adventure, vaguely in the mode of the old Saturday morning serials. You know, you sit back and you say, boy, why can't they make movies like this anymore?
The worst thing for me is Belloc's accent. At no point does it sound anywhere near French to me, I'm gonna be honest.
Dr. Jones, again we see there is nothing you can possess which I cannot take away.
So I went to Elstree and went into Stephen's office. There was no problem at all. He said, can you do a French accent? I went, no, of course I can do it, French. And spoke a little French to him. He said, fine, and I walked out and that was it.
Okay, we're like 10 minutes in, so you're probably not even watching this, so let's get into some touchy subjects. How cool are we with John Rhys-Davies playing a Middle Eastern man? The dude's Welsh, born to Welsh parents, so something like this definitely wouldn't be seen today. I guess it would. Still, modern audiences tend to be averse to white actors playing non-white roles, so Rhys-Davies as Salah does date the film, whether you agree with the sentiment or not. I guess the only other weird element here is that Rhys-Davies is actually a giant Islamophobe who has spread a lot of anti-Muslim and anti-Middle Eastern sentiments over the years, including some white genocide-esque comments.
And, you know, right at the moment, I'm one of those who actually believes that we're in danger of losing Western European Christian civilization. We're not merely replacing our indigenous European population with refugees from Africa and the Third World. We're actually replacing the culture as well, and that is catastrophic.
It's as if the pharaohs had returned.
Which is kind of a bummer, and really puts a damper on him playing a character from this region.
I think America is still the last best hope of mankind.
All in all, though, I think Salah is a fun character who complements Indy well.
I am the monarch of the sea. I am the ruler of the...
He's intelligent, honorable, and quick on his feet, all while being sure not to overshadow our hero.
Sorry, Indy.
The first person I offered Salah to was Danny DeVito, and he was dying to play this character, but he had problems with his television series not being able to make the dates work, and eventually couldn't do it. But he was my first choice to play Salah.
This isn't the only notable instance of brownface in the film too. Remember that asshole in the intro who betrays Indy for the Golden Idol? That's Alfred freaking Molina, best known as Doc Ock in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films. He's also from the UK, so him playing a local Peruvian guide is also a bit of a dated element.
Adios, señor.
I saw people online defending this casting since his dad was from Spain, but like, Spain isn't in South America. They speak Spanish there like a lot of South Americans do, but I'm not sure if that's much of a justification. Even worse than either of these two is this guy, who is just a white actor wearing a terrible prosthetic to make him look like a Nepalese man. There are just tons of white dudes playing non-white characters in this movie beyond these guys too. I don't know. I'll let you decide whether this should be acceptable today. All I'm saying is that it generally isn't, so it's an element that hurts the film a bit in holding up today. So all I'll say is that some of the way the film treats its non-white characters does come across as a little bit dated. The most offensive thing about these natives' portrayal though is their aim, goddamn. Anyways, I'm not sure what else there is to say about Raiders of the Lost Ark and whether it holds up. On the whole, I think most modern audiences could watch this movie, especially as kids, and still be enthralled by its aesthetic, characters, and exciting sense of adventure. With that said, there are definitely some aspects that are showing their age, namely with some of the visual elements, the way some characters are portrayed, the pacing of its action scenes is a little less frantic than a modern film, which, and I'm just gonna say it, could be something modern audiences might notice, and the fact that the lead character would definitely be rightly cancelled today for his relationship with Marion. So does Raiders of the Lost Ark hold up? It's obviously still an incredible movie that broke new ground in more ways than nearly any other film, and it'll always be one of my all-time favorites, but I'd say it's kind of in the middle in terms of holding up in 2022. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments, and be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.